Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to start a new chapter that is security in the contemporary world. This chapter is all about security, and you must not be knowing the term security in its right way. Many times it is made that security is something, uh, national security is something about which we cannot debate or discuss because it is a very confidential thing and it is very much vital for the existence of the country itself. So it is the atmosphere, it is the thinking of the people that security is something about which we are not supposed to debate or discuss. But this kind of thinking is not proper for a democratic country. Being a citizen of a democratic country, we must know the term security, its meaning, and in the context of our country, what does it mean? What are the security concerns of India? So, the whole chapter deals with this term security, and we are going to start the chapter. So, first of all, the question is what is security? At its most basic, security implies freedom from threats. Security means we must be free from any kind of threat in our life. If we are not threatened by anything, then we feel secure. So, security is freedom from threat. Now, what we see that our life is, as we see the life of a particular person, or the in the context of a country, also we can see that the life of a country is also full of threats. There are many several types of threat which we are facing in our life. A country is also facing various types of threat. So, what does it mean? That security means there should not be any kind of threat. Absence of all kind of threat is security. No. In this, what we find that if we consider that definition of security, that absence of any kind of threat uh, will be absence of any kind of threat can be called a security. Then what we find that every time a person steps out of his or her house, there is some danger of threat to their existence and way of life. Because threats are something which is present everywhere and it can be present there in any form. So we cannot, if we start thinking in that way, that there should not be any kind of threat to life of a particular human being or to the life of a country, then what will happen that we cannot, we won't be able to live our life properly because threats are always there. So we have to think about some selective threats to the security, and these selective threats are related with the core values. When something is threatening our core values, then that can be regarded as a threat to the security. So, now we will consider this matter. what is core values? We are talking about whose core values? Core values of a particular person or a whole country. The core value of country, what constitute the core values of country and what constitute the core values of ordinary men and women. So, what is important for us is to see that what are the core values, and then we come to the next thing, that the thread which is there to the core values. What is the intensity of the thread? What is the degree of that thread? There are various there are various type of threads, which may be a big thread, which may be a small thread, and in this regard we have to consider that if we consider some issue as a threat, then what is the intensity of the threat? So what we find, that for a human being, for a person, the core values can change from person to person, and if we see from the point of view of the whole country, we can see that the core value is the independence of the country, sovereignty of the country, territorial integrity of the country. These are considered as core values. So, what we see, that if we bring all the threat to the criteria of security, then what happened, that the prospect of security will increase a lot. Every time another country does something or fails to do something, this may damage the core value of one country. Every time a person is robbed in the street, the security of ordinary people as they live their daily lives is harmed. Yet we would be paralyzed if we took such an extensive view of security. Everywhere we looked, the world would be full of dangers. So we cannot consider security in such an extensive degree, because if we consider security as threat to all kind of core values, all kind of threat to core values come under security, then there will be a lot of trouble. So, security is related to only extremely dangerous threat. The threats mm, that could endanger our core values in such a way that those values could not be repaired. We will not be able to repair the threat, repair the loss which has been done to the core values. Then it will be considered as a security concern. If we did not do something to deal with the situation, then we will not be able to repair the loss which has been caused because of that threat. So, this will come under security. So, what is security? Security is when our core values are threatened, and those core values are threatened in such a manner that it could not be repaired, then it will come under security threats. So, now we see that security is something which keeps changing. It's not that in all the societies at all the time the security concern is same. According to the context, according to the situation, the security concern changes according to the place, according to the time. So, uh, uh, it is not something which is always remains static. It keeps changing. The idea of security is always changing, and it depends on the circumstances. And according to circumstances, we decide that security is threatened or not. Change, what happened that or it would be amazing if 650 crore people organized in nearly 200 countries had the same conception of security. So what we see that for all the people, because there are so many people, because there are so they are organized in so many countries, and the situation of the all the countries are different, so we cannot think that the concern of security for all the people is same. That is different in different situations, and in broadly we can divide the security under two groups. That is traditional notion of security, traditional concept of security, and the second one is non-traditional concept of security. Traditional concept means those concepts which are present there from the very beginning. It is there for so many years. It has been remained the same. So traditional notion is also divided into two parts, that is external and internal. Traditional notion of security, what we mean by external security. So what we find is that national traditional conception of security, under the traditional conception of security, the most important danger a country face is from military threats. What we find that another country may attack the one country, and in this situation, the country which are attacked, the core values of that country will be in danger. And what are the core values of that country? Sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. These are the core values which are attacked, which are under threat when a country is attacked by another country, when there is military conflict between the two countries, then these are the core values which are under threat: sovereignty, independence, territorial integrity. Okay. Now, military action also endangers the lives of ordinary citizens. Whenever there is military action, whenever there is armed conflict between the two countries, it is not only that the ideas such as sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity is under threat, but what we find that the lives of ordinary citizens are also under threat, because even almost all the time what we experience that in a war it is not only soldiers who are killed, but civilians are also killed during the war. So what happens that the country which are the countries between whom the war is going on, the attacking country or the opponent country attacks the civilian. Why it attacks the civilian? Because it wants that if there will be casualty of civilians in the country, then what will happen? That the support of the people of that country, support for war, support for war by the people of that country will become less, and they will start opposing the war, because they feel that because of this war the civilians are getting killed. So this is the uh, situation of war, when we see that the core values of a country is threatened. The core values are sovereignty, independence, the territorial integrity, and lives of civilians. And whenever such an attack is uh, being made, whenever a country faces the threat of war, whenever a country is attacked, then at that time, a government has three choice. It can choose. It has three options. The first option is to surrender. The government, what government do, that when actually there is war, it's not only threat of war, but actually when confronted by war, the government choose to surrender. Okay, it will accept its mm, defeat, and it surrenders. And in this situation, what happens that the government which surrender will not advertise this as the policy of the country, because it will demoralize the people of the country, and it will also uh, reduce the position of the country in the international world, in the international politics. So, a government may choose to surrender, but it will not advertise this as the policy of the country. So, whenever a country is threatened by war, whenever there is a threat of war, a government has other than surrendering, the government has two other choices. These are to prevent the other side from attacking by promising to raise the cost of war to an unacceptable level. This is what that if a country want that the other country should not attack on it, then what it has to do, it has to prevent the other side from attacking. How is it preventing? Because it has raised, it has enhanced its military capabilities because of science and technology. It has improved its military capabilities to such an extent that the country from which it has a threat will understand that if it attacks that country, then the cost of war will be too much. Cost of war means the war will result in heavy loss of lives, and heavy loss of property of the country. So in that case, what will happen? The country will not attack that country. So this is called deterrence, and about this deterrence you have studied in your chapter 1, Cold War. Deterrence is only, it is not using the military power. It is only that because of your strong economy, because of your advanced science and technology, you are able to enhance the military capabilities of your country, so much so that any country will become afraid of you, and will not think of having a war with you, because it knows that if it is involved in war with you, then the cost of war will be too much, because there will be heavy loss of lives and property. So, this is called deterrence. This is one of the policies which is adopted by the government in order to respond to the threat of war. Whenever there is threat of war, the government may use the policy of deterrence. It means preventing the other side from attacking by enhancing the military capabilities of one's own country to such an extent that it will cause to such an extent that fear is there in the mind of the opponent country, that it will cause a lot of loss to life and property of the people of that country. So this is deterrence. And the other policy is also there. If a country is under the threat of war, then the other thing it also can do is to defend itself when war actually breaks out. Uh, um, mm, at the first thing is to surrender, but the policy of surrender is such that any country cannot advertise this as the policy of the country. So the other than surrender, the important security policy is deterrence, and after deterrence, the another policy is also there, in which what happens that the country is defending itself. It may be called defense. First is deterrence, second is defense. The country is defending itself when war actually breaks out, and it defend itself, and in this way it denied the attacking country its objective to turn back or defeat the attacking forces altogether. So what is the defense policy? Defense policy is to is to defend your country in such a way that the country which has some objective, if a country is attacking you, if you are involved in a war with some country, and you are not the one who initiated the war, the other side has initiated the war, then that country who initiated the war must have some objective. So, in order by defending yourself, you are able to deny the attacking country its objective. The attacking country is not able to fulfill its objective. So, in this way, you can defeat the country and ensure your security. So the first is deterrence, the second is defense, and now traditional security policy. We are talking about the two components we have discussed. Now the third component of traditional security is balance of power. What is balance of power? Balance of power is something. What happens then that what we find that if a country is surrounded by so many powerful countries, then it opt for balancing it. And how does it balance it? Uh, The states secure their survival by preventing any one state from gaining enough military power to dominate all other. What happens that suppose one state becomes very much strong, it is much more stronger than its weaker neighbors. The neighbors are weaker, and one country is very much powerful, and the other countries which are their neighbor, they are weak countries. In military terms, we are talking about military terms. Then in that situation, what the weak countries will do, they will unite themselves in a defensive coalition. They will become one. The all the weaker countries become one. They will unite themselves uh, in a coalition, and in this way they will be able to balance this powerful neighbor. Okay, so what happens that there are many countries with which our relationship is not good in the past, or there are many neighboring countries. We are talking about neighboring countries. There are many countries who might be a threat in the future. In the past, they were having good relationship, and in present also the relationship is not cannot be said to be bad. But in future, it might become a threat. There may be the relation may be became worse, and they will go for a war also. There is possibility. So in that case, what happens that there is need to balance the power. Balance of power is only how to balance a powerful neighbor in such a way that if in future it may if it chooses to be aggressive, then how to deal with that situation. Governments are very sensitive to the balance of power between their country and other countries. They do work hard to maintain a favorable balance of power with other countries, especially those close by, those with whom they have differences, or with those they have had mm, conflicts in the past. So, balance, they have to maintain a balance. A good part of maintaining the balance of power is to build up one's military power. Although economic and technological powers are also important because they provide the base for the military power. So, in this way, we can say that balancing the power, there should not be any one country which has mm, much more power than other countries. If one country is in that situation that it is very much powerful militarily from other countries, then other countries will unite themselves in a coalition, and in this way they will balance the power. And by this balancing of power, they will be able to mm, 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 ensure their security, because in future there may be war, and this type of situation may arose. So in that situation they will be able to ensure their security. And a fourth and related component of traditional security policy is alliance building. Alliance is what is alliance? Alliance is a coalition of states that coordinate their action to deter or defend against military attack. If a country is in alliance with another country, then what happens that they are united, they are one, and in this way they are defending themselves against a military attack. Most alliances are formalized in written treaties. What happens that whenever we go for a military alliance, whenever we go for alliance, the terms are in the written form, and it also clearly identify that they are aligned. They are this alliance is being made because of which country is a threat to their security, and they are united. They have been they have made this alliance for what purpose? Which are the countries which can be a threat to their security? All these things are in the written form. So in this way, when countries form alliance, it increase their power, and they act as a unit whenever there is an attack on any one country of the alliance. The whole country, all the member countries of that alliance um, respond to that attack. They behave as a one unit. For example, after the Second World War and when the Cold War started, we have seen that people started America and the USSR started military alliances. Examples are SEATO, NATO, Warsaw Pact. All these military alliances were formed in order to ensure the national security of the countries. So, one more thing you must remember that alliances are based on national interest. According, we ally with any country, we form alliance with whoever country, whatever country, it does not matter. The most important thing is national interest. We form alliance according to our national interest. And what we find that national interest is not something which is static. It is dynamic. It always keeps changing. So it is something which is always in movement. So what happens that according to change in national interest, the alliance is also changes. There is an example. So, it was discussed earlier also that in 1979, USSR did a military intervention in Afghanistan, and against this influence of USSR in Afghanistan, America supported the Islamic militants in Afghanistan, and Taliban was the result of that support only. And Al Qaeda was also supported by America because it wanted to oppose, it wanted to oppose the Soviet influence in Afghanistan. So at that time, it had a type of alliance with Al Qaeda because it has to enhance its national interest, and its national interest was that the influence of Soviet Union would be less. Then what happened that the Al Qaeda launched a terrorist attack against America in September 2001, and after that attack, America became the enemy of Al Qaeda, and lastly, he encountered Osama bin Laden. So, in this situation, what we see that alliances are not permanent. It changes according to national interest, and according to national interest, alliances also change. There is one more example. What we see that countries which were with the USSR, they went for Warsaw Pact. And after the disintegration of USSR, many countries which were under with the military alliance, many countries which were having military alliance with USSR became the member of NATO. So in this way, we can see that alliances change according to the mm, national interest of the country. So now the rest of the things will be discussed tomorrow.